Throne and Liberty is a South Korean MMO that came out back in December of 2023, but it only just dropped here thanks to NCSoft and Amazon Game Studios. I bought the early access and checked out the various systems and play loop, and now I've got some opinions. Welcome back to another game review. I'm Robert from Society Case Files, and I'm bringing you some first impressions of Throne and Liberty. If you enjoy this type of content and want to see more, please subscribe to the channel and drop a like on the video. I've played a lot of MMOs in my time, way too many in fact, all the way back to Ultima Online and practically everything since, so I've got some experience in how these games go and can pick them up pretty fast. Throne and Liberty is free to play, and that immediately conjures up a lot of preconceived notions, and I know a lot of people would immediately kind of shy away from it. You get everything from it might be pay to win, like having to buy some kind of material to make it easier to upgrade or experience boosts, anything like that, to ridiculous monetary models based around cosmetics, buying outfits, buying hats, buying full skins or mounts or whatever else. In this particular case, to do early access, you had to pay money, and there were two tiers for it. There was $40 to just basically get in 5 days early. You didn't really get anything else special. And then there was a $60 one that got you some cosmetics and a bit of the premium currency. I only went for the entry level because I didn't really see the cosmetics as having that much value. I thought you could get some stuff in game that was going to be pretty cool. But even with that, and even the chance to do a first impression, I do kind of regret spending the money, but I'll get into that in a few minutes. And it's not that the game was bad. I did have some fun. The gameplay itself feels a little generic, to be perfectly honest. And yet, despite that, I still did come back a couple of times to play more. I think that primarily I was kind of enamored with just the newness of it, just having that fresh, shiny car moment. And that eventually did wear off quite a bit, and I sort of felt like I was doing the same things I'd done so many times before. And even the brand new systems that they put into the game didn't really help much. The ability to morph into an animal for your mount is cool, and you can even turn into a little flying creature when you go up too high, but it isn't quite enough to overcome the standard WoW-style controls and global cooldowns and irritating targeting that comes with the gameplay. And besides, you know, if you really wanted to do those things, you could probably be playing a druid in WoW and do them all. In fact, in this game, you can even morph into a little swimming beast that looks like a otter or something. So one thing that I do like is that you choose your class through the weapons you take. Maybe you want to be doing some assassination stuff, so you take the dual daggers, and then you can effectively multi-class by putting a staff in your secondary slot. And so now I'm like a mage rogue. Now, as you continue playing the game, you will be leveling those things up, so it may be a little bit more difficult to switch classes if you decide to later on. There's a bunch of choices for weapons. You can have the two-handed sword, there's a sword and shield, bows, crossbows, a wand, and a book. And they do try to give you some diversity, and for the most part, they do pull it off, but the skill system itself is unnecessarily convoluted. You have a bunch of skills, and you acquire items in the game that allow you to level those up. Then there's this mastery set, and then specialization, and it's complicated in one sense. I'm sure that once you have done it for 25 hours, it won't be so bad, but at the beginning, it's a little overwhelming. They even have a system that allows you to keep track of these things. When you open up the menu, there are so many freaking options. It's crazy. But there's a whole bunch of these systems to figure out, and the tutorial is only partially effective. You can level your equipment as well. So gear takes a specific piece of material, and then you can build it up to different levels, which improves its stats. And these things don't automatically give you a full level. They sometimes only give you 25, 30%. So you have to use more than one. And occasionally you will get this moment where it tells you to hold your button down, and then you get a huge bonus all at once. I'm not entirely sure what the rhyme or reason behind that is or how it happens, but it does. You can do the same thing with your weapons. You've also got accessories. You've got some rings, a bracelet, a necklace, a belt, and those things all can be leveled up as well. So when you combine those with skill leveling and mastering, and everything taking a different mat. And then, of course, you've got attributes, which can be raised by leveling up. You just got a lot of stuff to keep track of. And after you've got your head wrapped around all of that, there's a bunch of other systems that are totally secondary, but just as important. There's like this button that has a whole group of things within your levels. So like if you're level 5, you might have an objective, and if you achieve that, then you get a reward, and they unlock as you get higher leveled. There's another place that you can apply gear as a sort of collection thing to a book. It destroys that piece of gear, but if you get all of them, then you get a reward. Then there's the battle pass, and that has specific objectives to level up. Rather than you going out and just adventuring in the game and leveling up, you actually have to do specific things that are in the battle pass. So there's 50 levels in it, and I was thinking that you just had to play the game, and I was like, wow, I'm really only level 2 in the battle pass? That's crazy. And then I finally saw the part that explained that you needed to achieve those objectives in order to level that up and get all that stuff. Now, we'll talk about that a little more later. Fighting is a little more old school than you even notice on the surface. There's mob tagging, so they'll just go gray when someone else grabs one. And it's hardly a problem, though, in this case, because there are just so many freaking mobs to fight. It's not like you're really struggling to get your business done out there. And when it comes to the uniques or the tougher bosses, everyone can jump in and take them down, so that really helps. So at least they thought about that, because it would have been pretty frustrating if there was a specific mob I was hunting. If you couldn't fight that together, it would have been really annoying, because he didn't spawn very often. There's a defense button that they really emphasized at the beginning in the tutorial, but I've got to be honest, I never used it again and fought some pretty decent monsters during the story and just out in the open world. Maybe some of the bosses will require it later on, but considering how much they pushed it, I was surprised to not need it more often. Sort of like when I was a kid, every show talked about quicksand, and it seemed like that was going to be a huge problem when I became an adult, and it wasn't. But anyway, that's kind of neither here nor there. Okay, sorry about that. The battle pass happens every month, so it's not like one of these other games where you've got 3 months to finish it. You've got basically 30 some days. There's 50 levels to them, and you can get a bunch of stuff for free or pay the $5 to get access to the premium items. And they're okay. They mostly look like cosmetics. You don't level it up through the normal means. Like I said, you do have to achieve these specific battle pass objectives. And some of them are going to require you to be higher level. So I'm a little surprised that the very first battle pass didn't take like 60 days. Because 30 days just seems like they're really putting a heavy demand on you to log in every single day to get this done. I mean, otherwise, at least as far as I can tell right now, it's going to take quite a bit to get all the way to the top in such a short period of time. Again, I'm not entirely sure how hard it'll be to max out, but I played quite a lot and I barely managed to get level 4 on it. I'm assuming the harder ones give more points, the harder objectives that is, but I didn't give them a specific try yet. I was more interested in just leveling my character up so that I could get to the point of doing harder things. And I did make it to level 16 before I decided to do my first impressions. I had to say, I didn't even know I was leveling until I hit level 9, because there just wasn't any sort of fanfare to suggest it happened. And with all the other systems in place, it's hard to keep track of them all. Most of them aren't overly necessary, and they feel like someone in the studio kept saying, oh, we need to add this, or maybe the playtesters got bored, so they just said, hey, why don't you add this brand new thing to keep me engaged? And whatever the case, it's got a lot of stuff to keep track of. So I think that whoever was making this had a case of, oh, shiny, and constantly wanted something new. Graphically, it's beautiful, and it reminds me a lot of Guild Wars 2, and that's a cool thing, but as good as the graphics are, I'm not so totally blown away by them that I'd recommend it solely on that. Not like when Black Desert came out, which at the time had some of the best graphics ever. And honestly, and to be totally fair, I did start playing that just for that. And then once I started playing, the combat just kind of lost me. It was just too, kind of reminded me of Dynasty Warriors, and I just wasn't into that as much. I mean, since you're just mowing through tons of people, it was a weird game. Ultimately, I'd say that if you're here for the graphics, then you might be a little overwhelmed by all the stuff they expect you to keep track of. The game kind of reminds me of a cross between Lost Ark and Final Fantasy Online, and it gets the latter comparison because of the way that the quests work in the game. The main story quests have a lot in common with that. Go to this place, talk to this person, go to this place, talk to this person, go to this place, kill like 2 or 3 monsters, go to this other place and talk to somebody. And I always thought that was weird coming from things like WoW and EverQuest, where you're just slaughtering monsters constantly for the levels. But in this one, it's a little similar in that regard. Now, you do have other systems in place if you just want to mangle stuff. Like there's a contract system where you take these micro quests and they pretty much involve go out, kill X number of guys and get a reward. And so I guess that's sort of how they supplement it. I compare it to Lost Ark because of the way that the structure works. It does continually move you through a map to do things. And I had that sense while I was playing it. Obviously, this isn't the top-down ARPG style, but it did have that flair of the look and the feel and the ridiculousness of the characters. I'm not entirely sure what to think about all that, but I will say this. I'd really rather just play Final Fantasy than this one, mostly because they've had a lot of time to work out the quality of life features, and I honestly just found it easier to acclimate to the playstyle in that game because there just aren't as many just crazy systems in place. And those that are in Final Fantasy are just a lot easier to explain. Not to mention the fact that the group content is much simpler to understand overall. And speaking of that, I have no idea what to do with group content in Throne and Liberty. I'm not entirely sure if maybe I just didn't get high enough level to find out, or if it was there all along and I just couldn't find that specific system. But if it's like everything else in the game, it'll be at least confusing to start and maybe simple once you've had a chance to use it for a while. So all around, I'm not entirely sure I'd recommend Throne and Liberty. Yes, it'll be free to play, and it comes out for real as of this video, still in early access. It'll be coming out on October 1st, but that might make it less fun rather than more. Sure, there's no reason not to make a character and tool around in it, but frankly, there are just better games out there. I'd really recommend playing Final Fantasy over this unless you are just sick to death of playing it already, or you just cannot stand the idea of paying for a subscription. But if that's the case, if you are fatigued on Final Fantasy or WoW or any of those, I don't really feel like Throne and Liberty will scratch the itch you're looking for. All around, my impression suggests skipping this game and waiting for something that just takes a few more chances, something that pushes the MMOs in a new direction in some way. You just won't find that here. But anyway, thanks very much for checking out the video, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe to the channel and drop a like. I'll see you next time. Thanks.